Hello, this is Grace and
Persia. Hi.
And please, how do they say it? Please subscribe, like, and
Comment.
smash that button.
I don't know
Comment.
what button you're smashing, but
Anyway,
you guys
don't know.
keep texting us, but leave the comment in the actual video because it'll
Okay.
help share it with others.
So what we're going to talk about is like the highest stage of practicing good boundaries, and this is what we're trying to achieve. It takes a long time of personal work to get to this point, but we're going to describe what the best way is in detail about having the best type of boundary to let the divine work on your behalf. So, Persia, what are the aspects of having the best boundary?
Well, we're going to tell a story in order to explain these aspects.
So the story has to do with a landlord we had one time where the spirit sent us to stay at a place that we
didn't need to stay there.
We didn't need to stay there.
We did not want to stay there, but we were being put through a test. We had to demonstrate that we had completed a lot of inner work on old conditioning about how people respond to each other when you have to negotiate a difficult situation.
So the things that the aspects of this type of work means that there's a couple things. You don't have any sense of right or wrong, good or bad, and you don't have a judgment of the other person that you're having a difficult time with. So you're seeing the divine light within them, and you're recognizing that they're just in a lot of pain, and that's why they're not able to make a decision that has to do with fairness or justice. So that's the first aspect, is seeing the person in the divine light and not judging them. What's the next part?
That also includes not taking anything personally, but that just fits into what that means. You're not using force, you're not trying to convince, and you're not contending with another person's story. You only stick to what you know is your business and what is truthful and sincere.
So you're not getting entangled with their story or their drama.
Not verbally or
mentally,
yeah. or emotionally,
so
which is very hard to do. You have to do a lot of work on old neural pathways and programming and conditioning from childhood to get rid of all of that. Because a lot of people, when they don't agree with each other, one of our teachers says it's the game King of the Hill. If they can make you emotionally react, then they know that they don't have to take responsibility for themselves. So you don't want to just suppress. Maybe in the moment you should. It's better. Suppress your emotional reactions. You want to deal with the reaction that's arising in you. When you get further along, we want to show you the success that happens because you're so aligned with the truth of the light inside of you that the light has free will to work on your behalf and help you completely miraculously untangle from a difficult situation where another person is really stubborn and resistant and they're not behaving correctly. But you don't need to do anything. So we're going to tell a little story about that. So
well, the next thing is you have to be really humble. You have to be really simple. Don't over-explain, but just be very simple, very humble.
Stick to the point in the shortest possible amount of words.
And then you have to back off.
And you have to be patient.
Yeah, very patient.
Give the person time to respond and sort it out. And if they don't immediately respond properly, then take a step back and let the divine know in your mind, I'm going to see this person in the light, and I can see their suffering, and I'm going to let the divine handle it. But that only works if you're actually coming from a place of sincerity and light and peacefulness.
So you have to be very sincere, and you also have to make sure that it's something that is a need and not a want.
So
it has
point.
to be a basic human need that's
either
being
something
understood.
That's already agreed upon,
yeah.
That sounds like it's functional for both people, and you have to be able to separate what are your human respect rights versus what are demands that you have that may actually be really toxic. So that can fit in the category of a want. versus a need. Some of your wants might be reasonable, but if you haven't communicated them beforehand, you need to do that peacefully.
So the story we're going to tell is sort of demonstrates these aspects.
Oh, there's one more aspect.
One more aspect.
Just one last one. You want to take refuge versus trying to,
most important part,
to be in control, which we've already implied, but I'm just going to add that to the list. You are surrendering the outcome. You are only acting again from the peace inside of you and from what really sounds sincerely for the good of all. And you're letting, when you take refuge, you're completely dialoguing with the divine, that it's very clear to you that this is a right that is within your own
basic needs.
Yeah. And so if it really truly belongs to you, it can't be held back from you. The divine will change circumstances to make it come to you.
So that's the most critical aspect, is you're taking refuge, you're taking shelter in God or the divine, and you're allowing God to,
whoever.
You're allowing God to work on your behalf because you're following these very, very strict standards.
So the story that we're going to tell, that where we got tested, the divine asked us, our teachers asked us to move into an apartment one summer to complete a test, to see whether we had inner control of all these things that we just discussed, if we had fully completed the work. When you complete the work, you get tested afterwards because you have to prove it. That's how initiation works. So we ended up renting this apartment that we did not want to rent because we were told to. And the place was overpriced, and it was
a wreck.
It was a disaster. I won't go into detail. You'll have to take my word for it.
But we spent a long time cleaning the place.
We spent hours every single day for 5 days nonstop getting rid of some very disgusting aspects of the apartment, which could really emotionally make you a basket case afterwards, but we had to be peaceful and joyful and not complain.
So in the meantime, the landlord was refinishing the downstairs of the building we were in, and she had been doing the floors. The wood floors were getting refinished, and she was painting. And what ended up happening
What's
is that
wood floor?
It was a varnish and paint, and she was using a very, very toxic materials, and we are very sensitive to VOCs, and we know how toxic and dangerous VOCs
especially if you don't open any windows and you trap the smell into the house and there's no ventilation.
So the house was not being ventilated correctly. Everything was sealed up, and those toxic fumes were traveling up into our apartment that was above the space she was finishing, and we were starting to get very sick.
And this landlord had lawsuits against her, and she had neglected, her landlord responsibilities with other tenants that she had.
That she told us about.
And she appeared to have some, internal struggles she was seeking a lot of help going to regular appointments for. I don't want to say too much about that. But she was suffering deeply.
Yeah, she was in a high state of anxiety and
she did
pain.
Not trust us when we first arrived. She was, even though her place was the problem, she was extremely distrustful and very blunt about it, and kind of cold and forceful. So when we got there,
not an easy person to work with.
Not an easy person to work with. But we decided, okay, we totally are already aware that this is a test. We can't take anything personally, and we have to follow all these aspects we told you about. And it wasn't easy. It was very exhausting. The VOCs were making us sick, and in order to live in a sterile environment, we had to continue working while we felt really sick. But we had to ask her to open the doors and windows, and she didn't want to because she didn't like the sound of the traffic on the street, so she wanted to seal the house up with all these VOCs.
So we did make several very simple requests, and she was she responded kind of in a very rude way. And so one day we just had to leave the place because we were becoming so sick. And we spent the day at this park waiting around and figuring out what to do. After we had followed these procedures we're talking about.
Yeah, every time we asked her for something, it was just within legal tenant rights. So we would just say, such and such is occurring, and we would like to ask if it's okay. And we said it in a really sweet, simple, humble way. If this can be fixed. Multiple things in the house were problematic. And then we would just wait for her response. And she didn't like certain things that we were asking for. She was quite an anxious person. So we kept just keeping it simple and then waiting. But in the first week, there was a lot that needed fixing. And we only had to live there for the summer, thank God. But, there was like a lot of ways in which we had to hold a certain space inside of us that was truly
peaceful,
simple and peaceful, and only focusing on tenant rights, which fits into the category of needs, because the place had to be in a certain condition for us to live there, and certain things need to be in working order. So we didn't explain ourselves, we didn't create a drama, we didn't hold judgments about her, we just kept putting it in God's hands.
And God worked different things to make sure things happened so that what we needed to have fixed and cleaned and whatever, it got done. And it wound up at the last thing that happened on this day that we had to spend out of the apartment and wait around. This little girl came up to Persia at the park.
So we were waiting because we knew that the lady was feeling a lot of tension, and we didn't know when the right time to communicate again was. We were kind of trying to intuit and listen to God, and we were just staying super, super focused on taking refuge in God, meditating the whole entire day that we were out of the house so that we wouldn't get sick. And this little girl veered, she was maybe 3, she veered off the path that her parents were walking down to this little lake beach, and she veered off maybe 80 feet away from her parents. And she walked over to the picnic table we were sitting at, and she looked up at me and she said, "What are you waiting for?" And then she spaced out and drifted off and trailed off with her parents. And we were like, oh, okay, it must be the right timing. So we hopped back in the car and arrived at the apartment, and
the windows were still sealed up, and the apartment was still smelled like chemicals. And we were trying to air out the apartment upstairs as best we could. And then the phone rang, and it was the landlord calling. And
right after we arrived. And she said, oh my God, I didn't even want to answer the phone because I was like, I can't handle talking to her.
Anyway, I answered the phone, and what she said to me was that she had locked herself in one of the rooms downstairs.
She was renovating, and the door handle was missing.
The door handle had come out, and the door had latched, and she was stuck in the room, and she had been calling around to everyone she knew, and no one was around. So she called us and asked if I could come down and get into her house and unlock the door so she could get out of the apartment. She was locked in the apartment with this fresh paint.
So to us, this was a divine intervention and miracle, because her sense of feeling indebted to us changed the situation completely, from her resistance and frustration to feeling like, oh my God, they saved my life.
Yeah, because she had been locked in there for quite a while.
And the whole time she was being tough, we continued to be really kind to her and never take it personally, and meet her anxieties and toughness, and kind of
just with softness and kindness and gentleness.
We kept being soft and kind, and she was being the opposite, and we didn't flinch.
So I went down and figured out a way. I had to find a screwdriver and a hammer, and I finally got the latch undone, and I let her out. And then while I was down there, I said, hey, would it be all right if I opened up all the windows to air out the apartment? And she actually at that point became completely agreeable, and I got to go around and open the windows. And for the rest of the time we were there, whenever I needed to get into her house to open the windows, she was completely agreeable to that. And I did a little gardening for her around the place, just because I wanted to. She didn't even ask me, but I kind of cleaned up the garden. And by the time we left that summer...
Well, she started showing the apartment to other tenants on...
Oh, that's right. We had cleaned it so nicely.
A month before we left. And when she saw that the trash zone that she had left had been completely renovated and made the apartment look better than it ever had, while she was showing it to other tenants, she suddenly thought that we were the kindest people on the face of the earth.
She was hugging us goodbye when we left and just like so blissed out by how happy she was that we had been there.
And the whole time we were asking God to intervene, we were focusing on seeing her in the light, seeing her as a divine child of God. And what we found out later was that she had severe depression, and she was really struggling, and she was pretty much a handicapped person physically from some health problems that she had. And all of her trust issues turned into the entire different direction, and she begged us to come back again next summer, and she thanked us, and she became super, super giving and kind to us. And
just because we maintained our peacefulness and our kindness, and we just kept praying for her and seeing her in the light and seeing her highest true self.
Yeah, it
wasn't easy, but that's
us,
what we did.
It lifted a weight off of our shoulders of thinking that we're trapped and that the situation is impossible when you're dealing with very difficult people. And probably all of us have had very difficult people to deal with our entire lives in one way or another. And this huge weight of ever believing ever again that I had to struggle if I was to encounter a person who was not completely in integrity, that belief was gone from my whole energy body, my emotions, my mental thoughts, my beliefs, and it never came back again. And we've maintained this practice. It was an incredible lesson for us, and it transformed the landscape of our lives. That's why we wanted to share it today. The peace monks and 1,000 other stories I could tell are telling people every day, transform yourself. You are going to feel like you want to battle people because the brain takes pleasure in that. You are going to feel like you want to judge and see the worst in people because the brain takes pleasure in that. That's an aspect of the fight or flight and survival mechanisms and emotional mechanisms of the brain. You can override that with the fluidity of your neocortex and the God brain, which is the frontal lobe, by loving. And that means being peaceful. The monks that are talking about peace, saying transform yourself first, take responsibility for yourself first, that doesn't just change your relationships personally or your community. That is actually the only way. Your inner transformation is the only way the entire planet will transform. So if you're an activist or you recognize that the earth is going through a lot, you have to understand that this is the most powerful form of activism on the planet. It's the most effective. It gets results. So we're not saying that we have to walk around and, not have these things arise in us. We're saying continue to work on the goal of transforming it inside yourself and finding peace inside yourself. We can make that as simple or complicated as possible. The process, it does take practice, but you have to show up. You have to see those places inside of you that are getting entangled and really frustrated and trying to convince and contend with people, even just in your thoughts, is totally going to disempower you and the other person, and the situation will not move forward. If any of that is going on, what we did and the help we got from the divine will not show up. It only shows up when you clean yourself up.
So I hope that story and those pointers help. And
again, this is after we did decades.
Yeah, so this is kind of like I said, the highest form of having good boundaries, and that's what we should all be working towards.
But we wanted to inspire everyone else to understand why these things work, why they're important, and why they're worth our time to put in the inner transformation.
The inner work. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. We'll have another video for you
Lots of
shortly.
love.
Bye-bye.